Shalom from Israel, I'm Ariel Ben Aram. This week we read Parshat Ba'et Hanan. Usually the translation is, and I implored, I begged. Those are words, of course, of Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, our teacher, asking in general, is trying to summarize the context of this begging in relation to coming to the land of Israel. As we know, God denied permission to Moses to come to the land with the rest of the children of Israel. So now Moses is imploring, begging God to let him enter. So we took some notes about that. The first verses of this portion, they say, now that you began to show your servant your greatness. It's like, now that you have shown me, says Moses to God, now that you have shown me your greatness, it's like I cannot come to the land. This is basically, that's the idea. So, but again, let's take a little word by word, so to speak. Your greatness and your strong hand. So the question is like, what can I, it's like, is anything that I cannot ask but coming to the land after I have been shown by God His greatness and the strength of His hand. So it's like the greatness of God and the strength of His hand are the reasons why Moses wants to come to the land of Israel. So it's like he's giving God reasons to reconsider his decision not to let him enter the land. But again, the two key things here that we want to remark are the greatness. We're talking about the literal word is in terms of size. It's like big. Okay, and then the strong hand, God's strong hand. So let's try to understand these two things. The greatness meaning how big it is, really big. I'm talking about size here. Of course, size in a figurative way, because we know that God doesn't have size, but the semantic meaning of gadol is big. So it's not necessarily greatness instead of the honor, the recognition that we want to give him. You know, like, for instance, Alexander the Great, like some kind of honor that we give to the person. I think that is beyond that. So we're not talking about that kind of greatness. God doesn't need our recognition. Why? Because we cannot conceive, we cannot grasp His greatness in any way. So in this way, you may ask, it's like, you're talking about grace, you're talking about size, you're talking about honor. Then what's the greatness that you want to remark here? That's exactly the point. These things that are so beyond our cognitive power, like the power to know, to conceive, then we understand the greatness of God, how big it is. It's like the big in this case is unmeasurable, it's endless. So this is the context of big here. Greatness, whatever we want to understand in the translations. It's like, now that Moses reflects, let's try to put ourselves a little bit on Moses' mind. He said, now that I know that you are beyond comprehension, which is something that is such an honor to know. It's like I know somebody, something, whatever, that has no definition. So it's so great, so unmeasurable. So it's like now that I know that my connection with you, God, is infinite, is eternal, I want to live that. I want to live that awareness. Where? In the land that you are giving us. It's like the land of Israel is the context in which we experience God's greatness. So that this inconceivable thing that Moses called greatness, the big thing, is experienced, is lived, is grasped, so to speak, at some point. There's no contradiction here. But you just said that it's ungraspable, we cannot assimilate. Yes, but in the land, living in the land of Israel, is the beginning of assimilating that. We have referred in our blog, we have been writing 50 plus, 60 plus commentaries on the Messianic consciousness. It's the same definition. When we're talking about the Messianic consciousness, the Messianic era, the final redemption, it's beyond our grasp. Yeah, but it's a time in which there's not going to be evil. Evil is going to be completely erased from the face of the earth, from our consciousness, etc., etc. We still don't know that. Why? Because our consciousness works with this good and evil, right, wrong, dualistic approach to reality, to the material world. So it's like when people thought it's going to be only good, they say, how it's going to be only good? How do I know that it's only good if I don't see that it's something wrong or bad around? It's the same thing. It's exactly the same approach. So when we're talking about God, we're talking about something unmeasurable, something that we cannot grasp. So when our prophets say that the only interest of humankind would be the knowledge of God, this is what we're talking about here. This is the big that we are talking about here. So in order to know that unconceivable thing, we have to live in a land, we have to settle in a land. So Moshe Rabbeinu wants to be part of this. Like, I want to start, now that I started knowing you, I want to continue. And I know that the only way that I can continue doing so is in the land. So I implore you, Ba'et Hanan, I beg you, let me in. Now that I began to know your greatness. This is so profound. Now, what is all this thing is telling us? That the key here is not the greatness of God, it's not this strong hand. The key message here is that in the land, in the promised land, is where we start getting into that unconceivable or measuring conception, whatever, of God. So this is how important the land is. Now, in our blog, throughout 5 years that we have been writing, commenting on the Torah and Jewish beliefs, we have mentioned several times, often actually, that the promised land is living in the goodness, for the goodness of life. So when we say the promised land, what is the promised land? Yes, it is a piece of land. Indeed, it is. It's the territory of Am Israel, of the people of Israel. Exists, it's a fact. The Torah is telling us several times the land, that this land is for Israel. We know that. But again, this land is accompanied, is joined to the commandment of living in a particular way in this land. What is that particular way? The goodness that we have been mentioning in our commentaries. So this is essential. That's why it's so important to live here, and that's why we fight to defend our right to live here. Because here we realize our bond, connection, oneness, unity, which, as a matter of fact, in this portion of the Torah is mentioned, the Shema. Shema Israel, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Hear Israel. The Lord is your God, the Lord is one. So it's like there's a unity here, oneness. And then we close our eyes. Why? Because in this oneness, we cannot relate this oneness to what we see around. So it's something that is actually unseen. We cannot see it through these eyes. It's like it's a moment when we say the declaration. It's a moment of nothingness. Why? Because in the oneness of God, we cannot conceive, we cannot label. We cannot say, oh, I said Shema and I saw these beautiful lights. No. It's beyond that. So again, we achieve our connection, our bond with God. But by achieving, we're saying, realizing, like experiencing. How? We don't know. It's so inner. But then God is commanding us. It's just go to the land. In the land, you will be connected to me. This connection will be there. As long as you follow my decrees and ordinances, commandments. So there's a way to be connected. And the entire Torah is telling us how. And we know that connection, those decrees, those commandments, even some of them may sound abstract and hard to understand, are from, by, and for goodness. So the whole purpose of the Torah, the whole purpose of our lives is goodness. So when God is setting aside this land, the land of Israel, for us, the Israelites, the children of Israel, then we know that the purpose is goodness. This is not the purpose here. It's not to conquer the world. It's not to own anything except for living with God. That's the whole point. And then from that point, we become the light for the nation. The rest of the world will know. Why are we here for? But first we have to be here. All the children of Israel, all the tribes, all the remnant of Israel have to be together here in the land. Then we will see. And by being in the land, we mean sovereignty. Like we govern ourselves. We are no colony from anybody. And we have the temple as the physical expression of our connection with God. Then things will start manifesting according to God's will, by the way. So it's that we have a plan. We just have a plan after this. No, the plan is the Torah. We don't have a plan. Our plan is the Torah. So for those who believe that the Zionist idea is to conquer and own the world, they are very mistaken, because the Torah doesn't say that. And we know that that's not part of our identity. The commandment from the Torah for those who are not Jews, who believe in the Torah, in the Hebrew Bible. This is the land of Israel. We're supposed to be here. They don't ask us to go to the United States, to Russia, to Australia, to Antarctica, anywhere. Stay here. Or to conquer anybody. There's nowhere in the Torah saying, and once you occupy the land, you're going to conquer the world. It doesn't say anywhere. Hasbe shalom. So we don't know where this anti-Semitism, this anti-Zionism, from where it comes from. We don't know. I mean, we have reasons, of course, but we're not going to discuss that here. Maybe one day in a forum we discuss this. What are the reasons? So the reason is to realize, to experience, to come to realization, reality, our connection with God. So we are disconnected at the moment. We're not completely connected. We are not all in our land, and we haven't built the temple. And when those things happen, then we will see. The Torah will tell us. Indeed, it's a wait and see thing. But we have to do our part. We have to live here in Israel. Then things will come. God will manifest. And this last book of the Torah is about that. God is telling us, you return to me and we'll return to you. You know, all this idea, all this divine plan that God has will be exposed in front of everybody, not just to us. All the world, humankind will know finally what God's plan. What the Torah is telling us and our prophets, in order for that to happen, we have to be here. All of us. So, again, let's wrap up the first verse of this portion. We say, now that I have seen, or you have shown me, says Moses to God, your size, your greatness, which we explained before. And then the second, your strong hand. So we understand in many of the meanings that our mystic sages have revealed, the hand of God is the same hand that took us out of Egypt, the strong hand. But again, this strong hand is in the context of living in the promised land. Moses is telling God, now that I know, I want to enter. Therefore, this connection of the strength of the hand of God had to do with living in the land. Yes, it had to do elsewhere to get out of it from Egypt. It's been in the desert for 40 years by the strength of his hand. Now, what is the hand of God? We don't know that he doesn't have hands. We know that. The hand is the representation of giving. And we're talking about a strong hand. We're talking about God's love, basically. It's like, now that I know your love, everything comes from your love. I want to be in the land in which love is the foremost reference for life. Then Moses doesn't want to miss the train or the boat. He said, I want to be there, I implore you. So let's learn from Moses. Like, if he was close to God, is denied the entry, and he's begging, this is big. He doesn't want to miss it. Then let's understand that in the context, that it said, of the land. Let's find out what the land is. Beyond the geographical borders. Again, we have to repeat, it's goodness. And it's the beginning of knowing God. Okay, this is the first part of the notes that we were taking on this portion. Now he continues in the following verses saying, let me cross the Jordan River and see the good land. We call it good. So again, there's a connection. Let's put the pieces together. Just try to pay attention to the sequence of what we're trying to communicate, to reveal here. The good land, this good mountain, this line is calling the land a good mountain. It's like the shape of a mountain. There's a mountain range, like Carmel and some other places. Hills. This is a good mountain. And again, good. Good land, the good mountain. So again, friends, ladies and gentlemen, this is about goodness. So let's open our eyes. So let's try to make goodness our cause and the effect. That's the idea. So it's interesting how few verses can mean so much. And this is the entire Torah. This is the knowledge that God is giving us. And again, it's just everything that we understand is, so to speak, the tip of the iceberg. It's like so much deeper, big, below or above in this case. Mountain is something that we climb. And then this is a very important thing. And the Lebanon. Or you say the Lebanon in the Torah and in the Hebrew Bible in general is referred to the Bet HaMikdash, which means the Temple of Jerusalem. This is the goodness of the land, the goodness of the mountain, meaning the ascent to Him, which culmination is culminated, is realized in the Lebanon, in the temple. Conclusion, in our connection to you, we realize everything that we say, everything that we want to know, the goodness that we're talking about. So it's interesting, the Lebanon, the root word is white, and to whiten, like to make something white. We have said many times in our blog that the Torah is about differentiation and making a difference between black and white. So when the Torah is telling us is to whiten, the whitening, it's no gray, no black, it's white. So it's like, there's a reason, there's a purpose, there's a goal in life. Goodness. The goodness is the Lebanon. So again, let's pay attention to this little good Lebanon. Okay. This is the end of chapter 3. And then we enter chapter 4. So we quoted one or two verses saying, "Now, O Israel," speaks Moses. Moses is the one who speaks in the whole book of Devarim, Deuteronomy. So he's speaking to Israel. "Now, O Israel, hear." We have said that hear and understanding have the same semantic meaning in Hebrew. So we say Shema Israel, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. It's hear. It's understand. This is not about hearing. Hear what I say. Understand what is the point. What is the point of understanding? Knowing. Finally knowing. It's like the premise to knowing is understanding. We really don't know anything until we understand what it is. Or when we have to prepare what we're going to know by understanding what is it. So the understanding in this case precedes the knowledge. Once you understand, then you know. You can communicate it to someone. You know it clearly, you communicate it clearly because you understood. So when people don't understand, they can say, but they are not communicating what it is. They don't understand it. They really don't know what they're talking about. So the information that they have is just information, something abstract. So now, O Israel, hear. the decrees and ordinances, the commandments, that I, Moses, in this case, Moses, we have to remark something that we have repeated many times in our blog, that Moses represents in our consciousness the highest knowledge we have of God. That's Moses. That's why he was so close to God. So that's why we say that he represents, not we, the sages through our history, they have said this is what Moses means, represents in our consciousness. Our highest knowledge of God. So he said that I, Moses, teach you to perform, to fulfill. So he's asking, it's interesting because in this case, Moses is the messenger, is the deliverer of the Torah. He brought the Torah to the children of Israel. He's saying, I'm giving it to you. Actually, God is giving us the commandment, but in this case, because he's the messenger, he said, that I gave you, that I delivered to you. To perform. He's not just giving it to you, it's to do them. So that you may live. It's very interesting. So you may live. So I'm not going to live if I don't follow the commandments? That's exactly the question. How come that people who don't follow the commandments of the Torah and they're still alive? What kind of life Moses is talking about here? So you live. It's like the meaning of life. So that living in the real meaning of life, not just being alive, flesh and blood. It's goodness. It's like giving you the commandments so you could live. Yeah. It's like when you really live, when you're good, when you are cursed, when you are being the victim or trapped in evil, a negative way, destructive, undermining, humiliating, oppressed. That's exactly the thing that is not being alive, it's being death. And later, he would tell us, I'll give you the blessing, I give you the curse, choose life. Could have said, give you the blessing and the curse, choose the blessing. It's like, semantically, it's like, it makes sense. No, he's talking about life. Blessing is talking about curse. Why is it, and then you will choose life. You will choose to live. That's what he's saying, actually. I'm commanding you to choose living. Choose life. In opposition to the curse. What is the curse? Dead. What is dead? The negative. The evil part. Evil trends and traits in our consciousness. So we have to understand life in this context. So you will live. When Moses is telling you, follow the commandments so you will live. It's be good. Understand life within the context of goodness, then you live. Otherwise, we're dead. Yeah, how could you say that? I still drink and I still drive my car and I still, it doesn't matter if I don't fulfill the commandments. Just think about it. Is it everything good in your life? Everything fulfill you, not just emotionally, not just feelings, not just thoughts, beliefs, ideas. It's deep in you. You really feel that you are living like fully, like you're living a meaningful life. And by meaningful, we're not talking about egos, fantasies, and illusions. Who has more? We're not talking about that. It's like how plainly full of goodness you are. That everything is good around you. So you don't have to complain about something or feel bad about something. You will say, I'm fulfilled, and everything that I do is positive, comes touch other people's and creating something good in them. Then we will say that we're living, we're alive. And then we have a good life, which is not measured by what we have, but by who we are. And again, this who we are is not even that. It would depend really on our connection with God. Then we live. It's like I'm living according to the Creator who made me. He gave me life. He asked me to live it in a particular way. Gave me the Torah to tell me how. He's telling me that that's good. Moses is reminding us this here. Like, hey, follow this, you could live. So he's not saying, instead of saying, I mean, he could have said, instead of doing the ordinances, the commandments, the decrees that I have, brought to you, he could have said, have a good life, make money, have this, travel all over the world, entertain yourself, engage in your fantasies and illusions. It doesn't say that. He says, follow what the Torah is saying. And what is saying? You should live in a good life. How do we live a good life? By being good. What is being good? Doing goodness, not at the expense of anybody, but just by being. That's it. And again, that means, we repeat, not to harm anybody. And then we say, oh, I have good at the expense of others. But I have good. How could you say that? That you have goodness at the expense, at the detriment of other people? How come that you have it and people around you don't have it? So what kind of goodness is that? And then we question our entire existence. It's like, why am I here? What's the point? Why things are so wrong in society? Why people have more or they have less? Yeah, but that's their own choice. Yeah, sure. But again, at the long run, it's like we died finally. It's like, was it worthy the way I lived? So then, let's think about it a little bit. So, he said, and you will come and possess the land that God gives you. In other words, what Moses is saying is like the premise, the precondition for you to live in the land, so we can live and live in the goodness of the land, is by fulfilling God's ordinances and decrees. So it's basically reaffirming the same. Then later, we're not quoting, but we're just taking parts of the portion. Actually, we took exactly 10 parts. Interesting. So the fourth is, the Torah, this portion says, do not add or subtract from the Torah. We said here no grace. It's like adding and subtracting. It's basically trying to see it our way. So it's like, hey, it's not that black and white, let's put a little gray. So that we make a reference like adding or subtracting, not necessarily like taking or adding to the Torah literally, but to modify. The whole idea of subtracting and adding is modifying, obviously. So when we modify something that is good, it's like everything is good, completely good. We're going to add or subtract to goodness? Excuse me? That's exactly what it says, by the way. It's a metaphor. How could you subtract goodness and add to goodness? So goodness is good already. It doesn't need adding or subtracting. It's whole, it's complete. So in this way, the Torah, that's exactly the goodness of the Torah. So we don't have to add anything here. It's perfectly good. There's no reason to add another commandment or change another commandment or take out one commandment. This is the way it is. And then we understand it that way. It's like when we get enough. For example, we're in the desert, we didn't know what to eat. Then God sends the manna. There was enough for everybody. Was enough for everybody. So we have to understand that enough. He said that when people wanted to have extras, it would rotten. It wasn't needed. So again, let's understand it in this way. Just adding or subtracting, like someone say, why don't you add to goodness more goodness? It's good already. What is that you adding that is lack in goodness? That's one of the problems that we have with ego, by the way. We want it our way. That's what happened in the Garden of Eden. Everything, we have everything. Everything was completely fulfilled. Everything, goodness was complete. Until someone or something said, hey, it's not enough. There's something to add to it. And then we fall in the trap. So again, when we say that something is complete, let's leave it that way. So that we give the child what the child needs, that's it. We don't give them more. We don't go to excesses, unnecessary. There's no need for excess. That's the problem that we have with people who want to possess and accumulate. They want to go to the excess. So I want to exceed. Is it necessary? Is it taking it with you? Why I'm gonna give it to my children? Sure. But you know what I mean. Anyway, that's fourth. And later, in the portion, it says, not to the right and not to the left. What does it mean when we are told, you know, don't add, don't subtract. Subtract. Not to the right, not to the left. Straight. That's exactly what it means. Is don't go out. It's the same way that you don't add, you don't get out. You don't get in. So there are two metaphors here. Adding and subtracting and getting out to the left and out to the right. In other words, the path that we're walking, according to us, is not wide enough. So we need to get out a little bit. At some point we found it straight but narrow. So we want to turn left, we want to turn right. What's the point? This is the idea, this is the way, there's an end. This is not in the left, it's not on the right, it's exactly in front of you. Just go. No distractions, no ego fantasies and illusions. That's going left and that's going right. Now, in a moral, ethical issue, it's like, don't go wrong, don't go too right. Like over righteousness. Again, adding good to the goodness. Same thing. Oh, because I want to be super saddic, super perfect. No. We don't need supers here. Just be who you are. Be the goodness that you are and the goodness that is expected from yourself to manifest. That's it. So, number 5 here is very important. In this portion, in the Torah is repeated many times, dozens, literally. We're not exaggerating. But in this particular portion, there are 7 references against idolatry. 7. One of them is in this portion, by the way, is the repetition of the 10 commandments. The second commandment is no idolatry. That's one of the 7 mentionings. The other mentionings are related to the land. When you come to the land, do not do idolatry. Do not do idol. 7 times, if you pay attention in the reading. So it's telling us something, in the same context. Left, right, exactly what I've been saying before. So it's like the goodness is related to nothing different than its ways and attributes. Meaning, if you go to ego's fantasies and illusions, your idols, your false gods, beliefs in this case, when they say false god, they refer to ideas, to beliefs. Idols is our own addictions, obsessions, fantasies. So there are 2 categories. We mentioned them last week when we referred to the idols of stone and the idols of the molten idols. So we just want to call your attention or our attention. So why is repeated so much time? No idolatry, no idolatry, no idolatry. Like, what's the point with idolatry? But that's the point. Because our main obstacle in order to enter the land and settle in the land is idolatry. Meaning goes in our negative traits and trends in consciousness. That's idolatry, by the way. We have said this many times in many ways in our blog. But let's just pay attention to these highlights that we are trying to make in this commentary. Then something very, very important that our sages understand in different ways. It says, but you who cling to Hashem your God, to the Lord your God, you are all alive today. So of course, it's a clear reference, semantic reference. If we understand the concept, it's like you who didn't sin, the golden calf, the sin of the spies, you're still alive. These people died, you're still alive. That's one. This is the literal, general, semantic understanding. But then our sages say no, it's deeper than that. It's talking about today. When the Torah says today, not the whole Hebrew Bible, when they reference about today, they're talking about an eternal present. So it's today then, today now. So it's like those of us who have been close, connected to God, we're still alive today. And again, we're talking about being alive in the context that we have been so of the goodness. Okay? No idolatry. No false beliefs. No false conceptions. Okay. Number 7, there's a clear commandment in this portion to Israel. We have noted that all the commandments in the Torah are for Israel, except for 7 that are designed for the rest of the nations. So, at some point it says, you have to be an example for the nations. The nation will look at you. They will see what Israel is doing. What are the contributions to humankind? How, unquote, well we are behaving for the nations. Now, the whole idea when Moses is raising this issue, like this, be an example for the nation. It's not an example for the nations, literally. Like, he's telling us, be who you are. That's what it is. By being who we are, meaning exercising, performing, manifesting our Jewish identity. Okay. That is the example. It's very simple. So it's not about let's go over there and what the nation. Actually, the Torah is saying the nation will watch you. If you read it, this portion. But what Moses is telling us is to pay attention to your Jewish identity. Is to be who you are. Because the nation wants to know who you are. In the same way that they are in a particular way. When I mention names, when every country or culture, that they have the particular traits. So let's talk about West, East, North, South, without mentioning names. We don't want to get negative ideas or judgments. Cultures from these 4 corners of the world, they have qualities. Israel also have qualities. In contrast to the nations. So the nations, God is telling us, or Moshe is telling us, be yourself, because people will like to know who you are. In the same way that you will have developed some interest in knowing about other people, we're not isolated, we're not an isolated nation. We have interest in knowing other peoples, obviously. We interact with them. We have never been isolated, and the Torah is actually telling us to be the life of the nation, meaning connect with them through light. Not through evil, not through destruction, not through fascism, not through anything like that. It's just connect, be light. Be the light for the nations. You connect through the light, connect to them through light. What is light? Goodness. So in this the example for the nations is be yourself. It's like when people, the so-called role models, like, hey, follow this person. I will make, for example, Martin Luther King my role model. I will follow him. I will be like him. I will watch him. I will study his life, his doings, his struggles. They inspire me. I will be looking for him. That's the way. What Moses is telling us. This is just be good for the people you serve as an example of goodness. People want to be good like you. Okay. Number 8. This is very important. We put the word important with 2 underlying lines. Underlinings. There's a prophecy, actually, this one we mentioned the verse, the chapter 4 of Deuteronomy, verses 25 to 45. Prophecy about exile as the outcome of idolatry. It's interesting. We mentioned 7 times idolatry. At some point, this portion says prophecy. Because of idolatry, you will be exiled. You will be dispersed. That's the consequence. We get involved in egos, fantasies, and illusions, and negative traits and trends in consciousness. What happens? We get capped in those obsessions, addictions, attachments, frustrations, depressions, etc. We get trapped in them. We're dispersed. We're exiled in their darkness. So this is prophecy, because it happened. Not one time. We had several exiles. So thank God that we just ended the last one, which was the longest. 2,000 years. So, then, number 10, that we mentioned earlier, also the repetition of the 10 commandments in this portion of the Torah. Okay, then we jump to chapter 6, verses 1 to 3, in which Moses is reminding the children of Israel, Israel, that this is the land that flows with milk and honey. And again, what is milk and honey? Goodness in every aspect, level, and dimension of life. The land that flows with milk and honey, or flows with milk and honey. This goodness. So it's like they say that the milk is the Torah. Zero sages. And the honey is the happiness, the delight of drinking from the Torah. So it's learning Torah, the outcome is a delight. It's the honey, happiness. But the milk is nurturing. It's something that we nurture ourselves. Then we're happy. We don't get indigested. We eat something wrong. Meaning egos, fantasies, and illusions. Negative thinking, negative emotion. Then we get indigested. It's not milk, it's bitter. We have esophagus reflux. You start getting acid stomach. Why? We put negative things there. So in this case, we're drinking the milk of the Torah, then the outcome is sweetness. It's the honey. Actually, we didn't have 10, we had 14. So the number 11, Shema, that we mentioned earlier. And again, the context we said had to do with the oneness, our connection with God. That's the whole point of saying, Shema Israel, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. That's the idea. Now, number 12 Very important, is repeated probably 2 or 3 times more in the Torah, at least 2 times, twice in the book of Deuteronomy, in the Devarim. Do not succumb, or not succumbing, falling to prosperity. This is very important. Once we're good, once we know, we enjoy the goodness of life, be aware not to fall in this prosperity, in this overabundance that good is in our consciousness. Like suddenly we are over rich, over good. It's like we have a lot of it. Then because we have a lot, then what about this fantasy that I have? This little, foolish thing that I wanted to do. Be aware. It's interesting because our sages say that there were nations that fell because of the prosperity. They were so prosperous. They had so much abundance and richness that they ended up decadent because they were starting focusing irrelevant, unnecessary things. And then they ended up losing their abundance. Among them, Sodom. So then number 13, we quote chapter 7, verse 6. For you are holy people to Hashem your God. Hashem your God has chosen you to be for Him, a treasured people above all the peoples that are on the face of the earth. For you are the fewest of all of the peoples because of Hashem's love for you, God's love. And because He, God, observes the promise, fulfills the promise He made to your forefathers. There are 2 aspects here that we want to remark. Why He's chosen us. Again, the whole purpose is goodness. He wants us to be good in order to emulate His ways and attributes, which are goodness. Hodu Hashem ki tov ki olam hasdo. Praise the Lord our God because He's good. His loving kindness is endless. He's good. Then He said, you're the fewest of the people. This is the second part that we wanted to remark. How come that he told Abraham and he told Jacob, and he mentioned a few times, I will make you like the stars in the sky and like the sun in the sea, like the dust in the of the earth. It's a lot. But then now the Torah seems to contradict itself, saying you are the fewest. Then our sages realize we're talking about numbers here. We're talking about fewer, meaning less, but good. So the emphasis is about goodness. So I chose you because you are few and good. So you are my partners to make goodness prevail. And then He gives us the Torah. This is how to be good. Tell the nations. So that's why the Torah is the main book of the whole humankind that follow. Why? It's about goodness. This is to summarize because there's something deeper on this, but we don't have a lot of time. So, but that's the idea. So, and again, these treasured people that I want, that God says that He wants for Him. It's like Moses is telling us the people that is for Him, for God, is based, again, we have to emphasize this treasured people is because of goodness. There's no other reason. And the Torah is telling us that, by the way. It's not hiding the identity of the Jewish people all the way around. It's defining the identity of the Jewish people, which is based on goodness. That's what it is. So in other words, if we're good, we're part of God's people. That's what He wants. To prevail in humankind, in the world. That's it. And number 14, and this is the end of the portion, say chapter 7, verse 9 to 11. So we hope that we covered a lot of ground, because this portion covers, as you have said, several subjects, but again, all of them related to the same subject, the land. All the book of Deuteronomy is about settling in the land. We have said, we're going to repeat it again. The last book of the Torah is about the purpose of the Jewish identity. So we have the definition of the Jewish identity in Exodus. Actually, Genesis, the creation of the definition of our identity, Shemot, the book of Exodus. Then we have our connection with God, which is Vayikra, Leviticus, the service in the temple. Then we have our relationship with God in Bamidbar, in the book of Numbers. You know, how we related to start knowing each other, relating to each other. And now the fifth book is about our purpose in life, from beginning to end. So this is about our purpose, our end. What is the end of our life? What is the goal? What is the whole idea behind what is here? And it will go through the rest of the book, the rest of the Torah, talking about that. Moses is reminding us who we are, but for a purpose. He's not telling you, oh, Israel, you are this, and that, how nice. No. You have to do these things. You have to settle in the land. No idolatry. Make goodness prevail. So, as you said, this is a constant repetition from the beginning to end in the Torah, in one way or another. God telling us His message. It's about goodness. That's it. The rest is commentary. Yes, the rest is commentary, but it's huge commentary, because we have to know what goodness is. Okay. So with this we end our commentary. We wish you an abundantly blessed week. Shabbat Shalom, and until next week.